Sometimes, the coldest hearts hide the deepest love. Lady Mary Crawley, proud, elegant, untouchable, was never easy to understand. She walked through the grand halls of Downton Abbey with her head held high, her voice calm, her words sharp. But behind that graceful mask was a woman who felt every loss, every heartbreak, every joy. Her journey wasn't just about being a lady of status. It was about learning how to feel again. And through her story, we see that even the most guarded hearts can glow with warmth. From the very first moment Lady Mary met Matthew Crawley, something shifted in her world. She had always seen herself as above emotion, a woman shaped by duty, pride, and reputation. But Matthew challenged that. He wasn't dazzled by her beauty or her title. He spoke to her as an equal, sometimes even teasing her, breaking through the walls she had built around her heart. At first, she resisted him. She told herself she didn't need him, that love was a distraction. But slowly, the way he looked at her, the way he believed in her, it changed her. For the first time, Mary began to see what it meant to be loved for who she truly was, not for her name or her fortune. When Matthew proposed to her under the falling snow, it was one of the most magical moments in all of Downton Abbey. The cold night, the music swelling, and Mary's tears said it all. This was the moment her heart opened completely. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but it was real. Mary learned to laugh, to trust, to let someone else carry her burdens. Matthew became her partner in every sense, gentle when she was cold, patient when she was proud, and strong when she doubted herself. Together, they represented the heart of Downton Abbey. Tradition meeting change, pride learning to love. But love, for Lady Mary, came with heartbreak. The day Matthew died in that car accident, everything stopped. The sunlight, the laughter, the future they had planned, gone in a single moment. That scene, where Mary holds her newborn son, unaware that her husband has just died, remains one of the most emotional moments in the entire series. After his death, Mary's grief was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, hidden behind her usual poise. She walked through the halls of Downton like a ghost of her former self. But even in that silence, her pain spoke louder than words. And yet within that pain, something beautiful remained. The love that Matthew had given her. It became her strength. Through Matthew, Lady Mary learned that love is not weakness. It is courage. It is what allows us to keep living, even when our hearts are broken. And that was the beginning of her transformation. Grief didn't break Lady Mary. It reshaped her. After Matthew's death, the grand house of Downton Abbey felt emptier than ever. The corridors echoed with silence, and the world seemed to have lost its color. But amid the shadows, there was one tiny heartbeat that pulled her back to life. Her baby son, George. He was all that remained of the man she had loved most in the world. And though the pain of loss nearly consumed her, Mary did what she had always done. She stood tall. At first, she didn't know how to be a mother. She looked at George, so small and fragile, and felt a mix of love and fear. How could she care for someone when her own heart was shattered? But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, something gentle began to awaken within her. Every time she held George, she saw a glimpse of Matthew, his eyes, his smile, his spirit. And for the first time since his death, Mary found comfort not in words, but in touch. The warmth of her son's hand resting on hers. Her grief transformed into purpose. She no longer cried for what she had lost. She fought for what remained. Even when others offered to take over her duties, she refused to step aside. "I must learn to live again," she said, not just for herself, but for George. That was her quiet promise. To raise him in the world Matthew had believed in. As the seasons passed, we saw Mary balance heartbreak with strength. She learned to smile again, to laugh, not because her pain disappeared, but because she refused to let it define her. In every decision she made, from business to family, there was an invisible hand guiding her. Matthew's memory, pushing her forward. One of the most touching moments came when she stood by George's crib, sunlight pouring through the curtains. She whispered softly, "You'll have all the love I can give." It wasn't grand or dramatic. It was simple, real, and full of heart. That scene captured everything about Mary's strength. Her ability to love deeply, even after loss. Lady Mary's motherhood wasn't about perfection. It was about perseverance. It showed that even in the ruins of tragedy, love can rebuild us. Her courage wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and unshakable. The kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. Through George, Mary found her reason to live again. Through motherhood, she discovered her greatest truth, that love never truly ends. It only changes shape, living on in those we hold close. For most of her life, Lady Mary wore her pride like armor, polished, strong, and unbreakable. But when it came to her sisters, that armor often cracked. With Sybil and Edith, love and rivalry danced together in every glance, every word, every silence at the Crawley dinner table. Mary and Edith were opposites, the sun and the shadow of the same world. Mary, confident and composed. Edith, always searching for a place to belong. Their rivalry began as whispers and grew into storms. But what made it so real wasn't cruelty. It was closeness. They were mirrors, reflecting each other's pain in different ways. Beneath Mary's cutting remarks and Edith's wounded pride, there was something neither could admit: love. It wasn't until they both faced loss that Mary began to understand her sister's heart. She saw Edith not as competition, but as someone who carried her own battles. There's a moment, quiet, almost hidden, when Mary comforts Edith after one of life's many blows. No grand speeches, no apologies, just presence, a shared silence that said, "I see you." That was the beginning of something new between them, a fragile bridge built on empathy. And then there was Sybil, the youngest, the dreamer, the one who saw the world beyond Downton's walls. Mary adored her in a way she never fully expressed. Sybil's kindness softened everyone, even Mary. When Sybil died, something inside Mary broke once more. She didn't cry in front of anyone, but her stillness said everything. Losing Sybil reminded her that family, no matter how flawed, is the heartbeat of life. After Sybil's death, Mary became the quiet protector. She supported Tom Branson, defended him when others judged him, and helped keep Sybil's spirit alive in little Sibby. In her own way, she carried her sister's warmth forward, even if her own hands were cold. By the later seasons, Mary and Edith finally found peace. Their rivalry gave way to understanding. When Mary confessed Edith's secret to the family, a cruel act born from jealousy, she realized the weight of her mistake. Her apology was not loud or poetic, but it was genuine. "I am sorry," she said, with eyes that had finally learned humility. And when Edith forgave her, it was not just a moment of healing. It was the closing of a lifelong wound. Lady Mary's journey with her sisters showed that love doesn't always appear gentle. Sometimes it's buried under years of pride and pain. But even broken bonds can be mended by time, truth, and a softened heart. Through her sisters, Mary learned that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about standing beside those you once misunderstood. And that realization became one of her most human, most heartwarming transformations. There came a time when Lady Mary Crawley stopped living in her memories and started fighting for her future. And not just hers, but for Downton Abbey, the house that held her family's entire history within its walls. When Matthew died, many thought Downton would fade with him. The estate's future hung by a thread, its traditions clashing with the modern world. But Mary, who once seemed more interested in gowns and gossip, stepped forward with a quiet determination. The woman who had lost everything began to rebuild everything. Downton was more than just stone and soil to Mary. It was her identity, her duty, her promise to the generations who came before her. She understood that protecting Downton wasn't about money or reputation. It was about belonging. The estate was the heart of their lives, a symbol of endurance. And so she did what few expected. She learned. We see her studying ledgers, meeting with farmers, walking through muddy fields with Tom Branson at her side. The lady of the house became a woman of action. She traded silk gloves for work boots, pride for purpose. Each decision she made, Every tough call, every sleepless night, carried the echo of her father's guidance and Matthew's faith in her. There's a moment when Lord Grantham looks at Mary, pride softening his face, and says, "You're the future of this place." In that single line, we see how far she's come. From a daughter who followed rules to a woman who rewrote them. Her partnership with Tom Branson was one of the most surprising and inspiring turns in her story. The two came from opposite worlds. She, an aristocrat born into tradition. He, a chauffeur who married into it. But together, they became the perfect balance of old and new. Their shared respect and their shared loss of Sybil and Matthew bound them in quiet understanding. They didn't just save Downton's finances, they gave it a new soul. Mary's leadership was not loud. She didn't demand power. She earned it. Even when her decisions were questioned, even when others doubted her, she stood firm. She proved that strength could wear pearls and still command a room. In one unforgettable. For a long time, Lady Mary believed her heart had closed forever. After Matthew's death, she moved through life like someone walking through fog. Graceful, composed, but half alive. Love, she thought, was something that belonged to the past, something she had buried with him. But life, in its quiet persistence, had other plans. Henry Talbot entered her world not like a storm, but like a steady flame. He was nothing like Matthew, not a man of Downton, not bound by titles or tradition. He was daring, unpredictable, and modern. He raced cars for a living, something that terrified her. Maybe that was why she pushed him away at first, because loving him meant risking her heart again. Henry saw through Mary's coldness the same way Matthew once had. He challenged her walls, refused to be intimidated by her pride. "You're afraid of being hurt again," he said. And he was right. Love had cost her everything once. Why would she gamble with her heart again? But love doesn't always ask for permission. It finds the cracks in our defenses and slips through when we least expect it. Henry's patience, his humor, his understanding. They slowly began to warm the parts of Mary she thought had gone numb. Still, she fought it. She told herself that loving another man would be disloyal to Matthew's memory. She tried to convince herself that she didn't need anyone, that she was complete on her own. But beneath all that strength, there was loneliness. Not the kind that craves company, but the kind that craves connection. The turning point came not with words, but with silence. The moment Mary finally allowed herself to feel again. The look in her eyes when she realized she could love Henry without betraying Matthew, that she could carry both loves in her heart, was one of the most moving scenes in her story. Their wedding was simple, quiet, and full of meaning. It wasn't about spectacle, it was about healing. When she walked down the aisle to Henry, it wasn't just a bride walking to her groom. It was a woman stepping out of grief and into life again. Mary's love for Henry didn't erase her past. It honored it. It proved that love can come twice, in different forms, for different reasons. That the heart, no matter how scarred, can always beat again. By choosing Henry, Mary chose hope. The courage to begin again when the world has already broken you once. And in that choice, she became more than the proud lady of Downton. She became a symbol of resilience, proof that even after loss, there can still be light. There's a certain silence in Downton Abbey, a kind that only comes with time, loss, and memory. And in that silence, Lady Mary's story lingers like a soft echo. She began as the picture of pride, elegant, sharp, and almost untouchable. But life, with all its twists and heartbreaks, reshaped her into something deeper, something softer, something real. Mary Crawley was never meant to be perfect. She was meant to be human. Every moment of love, pain, and regret carved a piece of truth into her heart. And that truth was this: strength and tenderness are not opposites. They live side by side, balancing one another, shaping the person she became. When we first met her, she measured life in titles and traditions. By the end, she measured it in love. Love for her son, her family, and for Downton itself. She learned that to lead doesn't mean to command. It means to care. Her quiet gestures said more than her words ever could. a reassuring touch to her father's hand, a forgiving look toward Edith, a smile that carried years of unspoken growth. There's a beauty in the way Mary evolved. She didn't become softer by losing her edge. She became stronger by finding her heart. Her strength wasn't about standing above others, but standing beside them. She learned that vulnerability doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. Perhaps the most powerful thing about Mary Crawley is how real she feels. We've all known what it means to hold pain behind a calm face, to love deeply and lose terribly, to rebuild ourselves quietly when no one is watching. Mary did all of that, with dignity, grace, and the courage to keep moving forward. The woman who once feared emotion became the emotional anchor of Downton Abbey. Her laughter filled the halls again, her wisdom guided her family, and her heart, once shattered, became the light that kept the old house alive. As time moved on, the world around Downton changed. New cars, new fashions, new dreams. But Lady Mary's spirit remained timeless, because in her story lies a universal truth. We are all more than our pride, more than our pain. We are the sum of every person we've loved, every loss we've endured, and every choice we've made to begin again. Lady Mary Crawley, elegant, imperfect, unbreakable, will always remind us that the bravest hearts are often the ones that have been broken and still choose to love again. As the years passed and the sun set on Downton Abbey's golden age, one truth remained constant. Lady Mary Crawley was its heart. Her footsteps echoed through those halls long after the music stopped, not as the sound of power or privilege, but as the rhythm of survival. Mary's legacy was never just about wealth or titles. It was about endurance, the quiet kind that doesn't seek applause. She faced every heartbreak, every loss, and still carried herself with grace. The woman who once seemed untouchable became the soul that held her family together when everything else began to fade. In the grand story of Downton Abbey, Mary stands as both its past and its promise. She carried her mother's refinement, her father's dignity, and her husband's courage. But she also carried her own light, one that grew brighter through every trial. Her journey was never about perfection. It was about evolution, about learning that being strong doesn't mean never falling. It means standing up, again and again, with tears still in your eyes and hope still in your heart. There's a scene, quiet and unforgettable, where Mary stands at the window, looking out over the estate as morning light breaks through the fog. It's as if all of Downton breathes with her. That image captures everything she became. A woman reborn, watching over the home that shaped her and the family she helped hold together. Her story reminds us that change, no matter how painful, is necessary. That love, no matter how fleeting, leaves its mark. And that strength, no matter how silent, can still echo for generations. Lady Mary began as a woman of walls, guarded, proud, impossible to read. But she ended as a woman of bridges, connecting people, healing wounds, finding love again, and guiding those she loved toward the future. She didn't just survive Downton Abbey's changing world, she defined it. Through her, we see that the heart of tradition isn't about resisting change. It's about carrying the best of the past into what comes next. And so, when the music fades and the camera pans across the fields of Downton one last time, we remember her not just as Lady Mary Crawley, but as the symbol of everything the show stood for: grace, endurance, and the quiet power of love that outlives even loss. Because at the end of it all, Downton Abbey wasn't just her home, it was her story. And her story, in every way that matters, became ours too.